Hi, everyone. Oh,
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
hello.
Hi, I think I'll just start this off. My name's Kim Donaldson, and or Dr. Kim Donaldson, and I just want to, before I start introducing myself, actually say that I am at the moment, I'm coming from the lands of I'm located in the lands of the Wadawurrung people. And this land is on Victoria's surf coast, about an hour and a half from Melbourne. And in this place, I'd like to acknowledge the people that have occupied this land, and acknowledge their ancestors and the current inhabitants and those emerging. And this place is a place where people have come for millennia to share food and meet and talk on the coast, and there is evidence of those middens in this area. Now, my work is I'm an artist, I'm an educator, and I have a role currently as the head of the Masters of Contemporary Art at the Victorian College of the Arts Art School. And in the past, I have a practice that probably spans over 30 years. It's sort of difficult to think that I've been an artist for so long. But over 30 years, and in that time, it has constantly shifted and changed. I come from a background of painting, drawing, the traditional sort of what I call my craft of making. And as time has gone on, I have developed a sort of more participatory, collaborative activities, which has meant having an art space called Technopark Studios. As an offshoot of that was my PhD project, which was called Technopia Tours. And and I've also done the feminist colouring with Dr. Katva-Kaisa Konturi from Finland. And I think I'll pass it over to someone else because I've done too much, and I'm going to talk about something today of the era of Technopark Studios, something that is still unfixed, unfinished, and an ongoing, well, not an ongoing thing, but something that is still giving. Okay, next.
Carol.
Thanks, Lucretia. Yes, my name is Carol Stakenas, and I am an independent curator who is greeting you from your past Friday night. We're speaking Melbourne time, Saturday morning. So I come to you from the past. I also am beaming in from the ancestral lands of the Munsee Lenape, also known as Brooklyn. And it's a place that I really value the stewardship and the care that many generations have put in to make this borough, these lands, such a creative and generative place for so many people that define themselves within the art world and beyond. My own practice, which has been focused in public art for a while, has continued to evolve and move, not unlike Kim, move more deeply into the space of collaborative, collective engagement. And so one of the things that I'm always looking to be able to do is connect the dots on how it is that I've come to find a calling that involves coming together, creating with people in interdependent disciplinary, but also interdependent methods. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go in our conversation. So that's where I'm coming from. Lucretia, take us home.
So,
on the introductions, that is.
So my name is Lucrecia in Spanish, Dr. Quintanilla, and I'm speaking on the future of Carol from the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded, and First Nations people have been making culture within these lands for thousands and thousands of years. And I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past and present, and any Indigenous people watching this video right now. So what do? I've been an artist for about 20 years. And I'm interested in making art, culture in general. So I'm interested in music, and I'm a DJ. I'm interested in an interrelated way of looking at what culture making is. So I'm also interested in writing. I'm interested in writing about other people's practices. I also make sound works. I began as a painter. Dr. Kim Donaldson was my supervisor when I did honors a long time ago. And I was asked by Kim to take part in this conversation every Saturday morning for us. And I'm always interested in whatever Kim does. So it's been quite a fruitful exchange.
And I'd like to interrupt and say that when I was your supervisor doing honours, it was a pleasure for me to find someone that would talk politics. So, and it was mutual. So I've always enjoyed what you've done as well. So continue.
Oh,
Sorry to interrupt.
So, yeah, I think this has been a really interesting sort of speaking about the word inter, we've been able to talk about. So this is a product of a whole bunch of months of conversations. So a whole bunch of conversations which spanned, I guess, different experiences or lived experiences. This is not so much in the videos that you're in the conversations that you're about to see, but this is in conversation that you're about to see comes from having learned, and I guess also question each other in what is actually going on now, but also in what we've learned throughout these accrued experiences. Is that a good intro?
I think so. May I add one more thing as well? Because I really have appreciated having you both share your part of your creative practice began with being a painter. And for me, I started in ceramics. And I do think that there's something about the tactility, the kind of the material. I'm going like this, not only for the clay part, but for the paint part too, that there's something about the way we've been able to connect our conversations and our ideas that feel very directly related to our love of material. And whether that's, physical material or conceptual. And then finally, I need to honor my lifelong learning through feminist practices that have definitely evolved from the second wave to now much more contemporary intersectional approaches to thinking about transformative justice and why the personal is political and how that does shape the work that we do creatively. So thank you for everybody adding a little bit of something, because I think it is beginning to tease out the things that have brought us together and led to such fruitful discoveries.
Yes.
I wanted to add something else. And also I want to go back to your revelation about ceramics, Carol, and our experience in with paint and other sort of art making materials. And I think in commenting on that, I would like to say that working with those materials has made me understand over a very long time that I can never control them. So, and that they are always in motion and always unpredictable every time you confront them. So they are totally unfixed. And having that experience and being willing to go with that experience has, is perhaps the basis of this whole conversation.
So we've been meeting every Saturday night and every Saturday morning and every Friday night for you. For how long now?
Oh, since the start of the year. So probably February, would it be, Carol? And Carol and I were meeting before that. We met on another Zoom sort of conversational platform, which was started as a conference and then moved into a conversation. So so we've been talking since last October.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So truly a year. Yeah. I remember you began to share your work through the Paradox Network around the theme of urgencies and emergencies. And as that, with that provocation, you began showing your approach to not only creating your own work, but also supporting students. And part of that process was diagramming the relationship of the creative process. And the minute I saw those sketches, I thought, this is a person I want to get to know more. And that was why I reached out and said, Kim, can we talk, the way that you manifest the systems, the relationships of not only how one makes a work of art, but also how you think about how the art object, conceptual or actual, how it begins to join a social and built, architectural spatial relationship. What really captured my curiosity, and I said, let's start to talk.
It was, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been such a big feature of my Saturday morning through the whole, I think we've gone through a couple of lockdowns since it began over here. That's so right. It's been quite interesting to be able to catch up about that as well, to be able to make that connection and have those discussions. And on a Saturday morning for us, when I guess all the realities during lockdown all meld together. Mm-hmm. And to be able to ask you questions, Carol, or catch up as to what's going on over there. And chatting to Kim about being in the country by the ocean with the kangaroos has also been quite great, apart from these, I feel like the dream worlds and like the like Zoom worlds and all those things have just sort of like collapsed into one. And so it's been quite an interesting time. Should we talk about the dream now?
Yes.
All right. So speaking of dreams, I wake up pretty close to opening up the laptop to talk every Saturday morning. I wake my son up to start Spanish class on Zoom, and I'm pretty refreshed with I remember my dreams. So they're quite fresh in my mind. And the last dream I had was so vivid in relation to Unfixed, that I hadn't actually filtered, reality hadn't come in yet when I opened the Zoom. So I had this dream where I said to Kim was doing a performance art piece. And there was a big like rug, a big Persian rug, red rug, and Kim was you were sitting on a platform, a red platform, and you were about to perform, but you've forgotten to make your props. But you had some props, and then you were saying, I have to make some other props. And I said, no, Kim, use the green screen. You don't need props. Oh, you have green screen now. Let's go and get you a green screen. And with that in mind, I think we've developed a real love for our backgrounds, our Zoom backgrounds. But also we've developed I feel like we have seeped into each other's realities. And is this a good time to talk about your work, Kim?
Yes, and I think that I will forget I can't make the gallery work. I'm going to just start now. One of the things that through all of our conversations I have been thinking about is because the unfixed, constantly moving nature, which has been a thematic that seems to have come up over and over again. When thinking about talking about a project of mine that actually still resonates as unfinished and still moving and still giving, I actually thought that I would take you on a little journey into a different time. So
use the green screen, Kim.
I'm using the green screen. So I'm taking you back to 2011. And in 2011, so I think I'll just chat for a little bit about this. Not 2011, in 2008, I had an artist project space, an artist run initiative, as they're called in Melbourne. And I decided to feel a perceived need to get a space where people could experiment more in a bigger space. So, and now the location I chose was between a wetlands park, which is the scene that I'm in at the moment, and an oil refinery. So this is looking in the opposite direction from the other. So I'm moving back into this place now. So the actual building that I got was an old kindergarten. So, and it was a kindergarten used for a migrant hostel. So, and it had had waves of children using it across the years. It was built in the 1960s. It was a bit of a wreck when I took it on, and then I did some work in it, so fixing it up, and then a series of projects came out of it. Now, one of them that I actually initiated stands out as something that was actually never finished. There is no outcome for it. It sort of remains as an event, a memory of an event that happened in 2011, and it was from the 5th to the 3rd of November. The whole of Technopark Studios, as it was called, became the site of like as a movie set, and the environment became the place where sound could be taken. People could actually take location footage, and the idea was that it was going to be made into a film. But the film, of course, never got made. And I think I just want to the promotional material for the exhibition. I've just been reading this recently, and I'll just read it now. It's called The Last Great Road Trip, from the 5th to the 3rd of November 2011. And it goes on to say, a car with a full tank of petrol has been found. It is a time not far from now when the oil refinery flame has gone out and all petrol production has ceased. Gangs control the area. The supermarkets are looted and empty, and an incredible quiet replaces the familiar sounds of the city. The inhabitants of Technopark Studios plan their future. So now using the building as the location for this film, I will just reread some of the plot line. The simple plot for the movie was, and it was, Sue is an artist, and there's Sue entering the scene in the background, who remembers Technopark Studios and returns to it as a place of safety, familiarity, and good memories. She wanders, so she gets into the gallery and wanders through and finds the sort of ruins of an exhibition, so in the gallery, and she has these fond moments and remembers the car and the director of the gallery, and she actually discovers the car through the window of the gallery, and the car still has a key in it. And when it has a key in it, she starts it up, and it has a full tank of petrol. So from that, she plans to a trip out of Melbourne for the last great road trip, and starts to interview people that might like to go on that journey. So the scene is set for this event, and people came to the gallery and just played around, filmed. There were people climbing on the roof. There were, people, the environment where I was before, like this environment over on the wetlands, there were people shot film there. Other people moved into the more industrial zones. And then, so I think the fact that it didn't get made actually has resonance for me, and I can talk about this. And the actual building here no longer exists. I rented it for a period of time, and now it's been bulldozed and a new building's been built. And Lucretia, you went past there not so long ago and saw the new building.
It's so different.
Yes. So, and in a sense, so one of the things is when I was thinking about this is the car. I decided to put a car in the yard. It was an environmentally themed sort of show about what would happen when petrol stops being produced. And then there was my old car. So I got a sign for it. I got a sign that said Technopia Tours. Now, it actually was, the film was about the end of the life of the car and the end of the life of the gallery and the end of the life of Technopia Tours in the car. So now Technopia Tours actually did have another life, and that became my PhD project, but that was actually much later. So I was messing around with time with this work, where I created what went after it before it. So and in a way that's sort of messing with time, and now looking back at it in 2021, something in 2011, it's almost spooky thinking about some of the things that here we are locked down in Victoria or in Melbourne. Here we are, our supermarkets have been looted in the past, mainly for people trying to get certain foods and toilet paper in particular. And it's sort of, and we have just in Melbourne had the equivalent of gangs roaming the streets, wanting freedom, and Carol, what you had with the storming of the Capitol as well. So all of this is way past 2011, and the fiction of a story that I created. So I think I'd like to sort of leave it there and open up for a little bit of discussion on that. So, and I think that's what struck me, was that it was the degradation of the land through the industry versus the natural beauty of the coastal area, which apparently at one stage had like white mangroves and a whole lot of other there would have been animals and things in its natural form. So it was quite a stark contrast. And then there was this kindergarten, the playground for children, or a learning space for children in the middle of it.
Do you around the idea of unfixed, do you think what do you think the fact that it was unfinished, that it is unfinished, do you think that's a good thing, or how do is it an ongoing project? Is it finished in its unfinishedness? Is it?
I think it is through the effects of what happens in time. The recordings that I had were, my studio got broken into, and all of my hard drives were stolen. So none of this, the material except these images that I've got for a PowerPoint presentation, exist anymore. So the building doesn't exist, much of the documentation doesn't exist. And I think the story still lingers in both my mind, and I can tell the story too. So I actually don't, it doesn't matter. I can let all of that go. The story to me is what is important now. So, and it isn't something that is unfinished, unfixed. It's not an ongoing thing. And I actually can let it become something else. And I think, yes, it becomes the story. And whatever else is created from it. So does that answer your question, or?
Yeah, I was just thinking also about how you got robbed and how that also becomes part of the story of the Technopia tours as well. That it was such a kind of Mad Max sort of, at that time it really felt like, it felt quite dystopian.
What, the film or?
The actual place felt quite dystopian.
Yes.
And you saw that in it, but also what happens in a dystopia, you can't really control what happens in a dystopia, can you?
No, that's true. And in a sense, perhaps that was seeking out that unfixed, uncontrollable space and seeing what can happen in it. And I think that I feel a little like we're in something like that at the moment. And that things are emerging, like our art world as we've known it is shifting and changing, and certain things don't have the same focus as they used to in Melbourne in particular, Carol, like the theatres, the art galleries, they've all been closed down. And I think you showed me when you were talking about when the Whitney opened up again after you'd been locked down as well. So I think that it's made me personally rethink things, rethink the nature of what the art world is, both for me and for other people.
Certainly. And actually, to narrate a bit of a cyclical experience of getting to know our interests, our interests together, we did take a moment to share larger arcs of the projects we've worked on over time. And I was really intrigued to know more about the different kinds of projects you did at Technopia Park, right?
Techno Park Studios.
Studios.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you for the specific name. And but I love that by the time it came time to say what are we sharing now, that the piece you happened on was the one that included all of this disruption. Its refusal to be finished, and the rupture of even the possibility of it being finished being taken away because of the theft. right? There are so many layers to that as on why you would focus on this with us. It is very exciting in its frustration, or a word that you've brought into our conversations many times, the unsettling or the troubling. Kind of what happens when you are faced with those troubling moments of desire and possibility, but then the realities also, yes, trouble our determinations. And then where does that bring us?
Yes. Now, I'd like to hear from one of you about something that you've, a project that you've both, or one or the other, who's sharing next your Unfixed project.
Carol, it's your turn.
It's my turn.
Use the green screen, Carol.
Okay, so this is where I want to say what I'm about to try to do, we may need to edit around. So I'm going to take a huge pause. And what I was hoping to do was share I actually did want to do a presentation. So.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see right now? Do you see a PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And it looks like the Guggenheim.
Okay. So here we go. How do I get rid of myself? Do you still see me, or are you just recording the?
I'm just recording the screen. I can minimize you.
Okay.
Oh, except you're not.
So
But
here,
you might have to do that yourself.
I guess it's all. Whoop. So here we go. In 1989, as an undergrad art student, I stood with others in the atrium of the Guggenheim to witness Jenny Holzer's truisms encircling and ascending the inner spiral of the museum's distinctive ramps. It was the first time I felt, full body felt, a collective art experience. Standing on the rotunda, head tilted, looking up, aware of the other's bodies and shared attention, the pointed slogans spoke to us. When something terrible happens, people wake up. You are a victim of the rules you live by. At the same time, we marveled at how the words, these difficult truths, climbed the architecture. This was the place and the moment where my connection to everybody began. In the early 1990s, this is what everybody looked like. In Times Square, that is. Tibor Kalman and Scott Stowell created this work for Creative Times' 42nd Street project. Everybody spoke English. Everybody was bold, highly visible, and monolithic. Inspired by the Situationists, I was drawn to public art that was interventionist, looking for opportunities to insert creativity into the built environment, playing with the rituals of everyday life, sensing potential all around. Everybody set the criteria for what a successful temporary public art project looked like and how it operated in New York City, at least. It invited pedestrian-oriented, playful, creative encounters. I was super curious a young aspiring public art producer and curator, I was interested to track public art patterns, social relationships, look at how the work made visible the terms and conditions of the social contract being negotiated in our world. For everybody, this included what it meant when there was no graffiti. It was offered as evidence that the local community took ownership and pride in the work. The high-profile 42nd Street project was crucial to Creative Time's strategy to survive the culture wars and the draconian restructuring of the National Endowment of the Arts, which fundamentally gutted much of the public funding that allowed for the creative experimentation and bold gestures that Creative Time was known for, and many other artists of the time. At the same time, the 42nd Street project Economic Development Corporation was moving out the XXX rated movie theaters, peep shows, the sex trade in the name of clearing out vice and blight in Times Square to welcome its new corporate stakeholders, starting with Disney. The desire was to woo middle-class New Yorkers and tourists back to the district. For 25 years, when sharing my passion for public art, I started with everybody. Yet there were whispers from other counterpublics found in feminist and queer art histories. Lizzie Borden's film, Working Girls, the underground scenes from the Lower East Side, the meatpacking district, and Christopher Street piers. For now, though, I'm starting here again, and this time I want to trace an unfolding and unfixing to follow my relentless positive obsession. What does it mean to call out for everybody? For LEAP, Chris Doyle's project, he followed the subway lines that passed through Columbus Circle to each terminus. He invited passersby from all 5 boroughs and many walks of life to embody aspiration through a simple, arms outstretched, upward leap into the air. A resulting archive of 420 New Yorkers created this large-scale video projection that animated the facade of 2 Columbus Circle. What I learned is that public art practices can adjust the aperture of visibility to operate on multiple levels of legibility. As a large-scale spectacle, the projection component of LEAP focused on the full body gesture. Spectacle has no patience for nuance. On the other hand, the subway car card campaign that we also ran at the same time following the very subway lines that Chris used to set up the video production zones, we used the car cards that focused on the emotional intensity of aspiration through close-up portraits and poetry generated from the select aspirations shared during the photo shoots, the video shoots. I want to go home and take my shoes off. I want to own this town. Both in creation and presentation, LEAP traveled the transit system that shaped the conceptual framework to seek out a collective body. Now everybody is manifest in multiple bodies. Fast forward to 2005. To be honest, I wasn't planning to move. New York was my home. It was the longest I had lived anywhere since growing up in Tallahassee, Florida. And let's just say it took the strong support of close friends to help me understand the opportunity moving out of the comfort zone of New York, which offered tremendous potential to broaden my understanding of working in a literally expanded field. What did it mean to read Los Angeles? What histories needed to be understood? What about defining moments such as the feminist art program at Cal Arts, the Women's Building, the Watts Uprising, Rodney King? What did I find? Artists in movement, lots of feminists, HIV/AIDS activists that spoke of needle exchange, harm reduction, and militant sound investigations, radical architects and urban planners calling for spatial justice and honoring everyday urbanisms, queer and trans performance artists moving together and around one another, everybody contributing to a dialectical process with artists serving as critical social actors. The first time I consciously used the term unfixed was in the title for a talk I delivered at the Americans for the Arts Conference in Las Vegas in 2007 as a part of the Public Art Network track. The intention and clever provocation was very simple. Confront the definition of public art that was still anchored and defined by permanent public art. I made the case that my work was freed from that definition. The presentation set up the opportunity to share Karaoke Ice, this delicious pop culture mashup created by Nancy Nowacek, Katie Salen, and Marina Zerkow. Their ice cream truck termed karaoke, mobile karaoke unit was deployed throughout Los Angeles to unite people in a collective quest to perform and record new versions of pop songs using the vernacular of ice cream truck music. Karaoke Ice introduced people to the playful ways in which technology can be used to give voice to personal and collective concerns. Karaoke Ice also proved to be a useful exploratory project that was part of the shift in analysis from public space of New York City, which was all about vertical density, public transit, and operating under the myth of unity. Learning the known and often cited truisms that described Los Angeles, independent car culture, no center, and fragmented public transit. So doing a project like Karaoke Ice was a really easy place to start. Mobile, it was mobile and was able to traverse the freeways. It enabled us to become unfixed. It freed my expectations of where and how to find public art opportunities, to become a free radical of sort. I have more things to say, but I want to kind of stop there because I feel like the vehicle, we are starting to build a literal vehicle of possibility through our unfixed adventures. Lucretia, how about you?
You need to undo the mute.
Yeah.
So Carol, I'm wondering if we can see your face now.
Yeah, can we see your face?
Here I am.
Wonderful.
I thought it was really good to see this, like, this move from this place, the one place to another sort of center. I think like New York gets so much attention in terms of the LA does also, but not this side that you talk about. And it was so good to hear about that formative work for you as well.
Thank you.
And also, Carol, you talked a lot about how your environment actually had affected the form of what you were doing. So you described the events, the world at that time, and I suppose it was something that I'm very familiar with as well, is that that sort of not being in a vacuum of an art world that doesn't pay any attention to those things. So and that sort of questioning of I suppose questioning of the form of the work, questioning of its static nature, and each of those projects was something that shifted and changed and had multiple readings.
I'm nodding my head vigorously because yes, yes, and yes. And I think in general, it's been such an amazing experience to think about the motility of where agency can happen from, a very bold framing image that kind of pushes back at you feeling yourself against it, right? Because to even see something big and bold like the Everybody mural, you still feel your individualness too, but it's a very different relationship to what it means to connect with or engage the art versus ending up in a corner and happening on a mobile ice cream truck playing funky music where you can actually be the singer yourself. So it does really begin to play with the possibility of where we have agency and expression. And it's something that I've really felt has often connected each of our interests and practices in the experience of joining our discourse, but then also being really interested in the rituals of everyday life and sociality, and also the role of music and time-based experience is something else that I feel has really connected a lot of our, similar instincts, whether, we've each found a different way of expressing and connecting to it, but I've really respected that as a through line.
Well, this is the other thing that we haven't explained is that I didn't know you, Carol. And Kim and I have known each other for some time, for a long time actually now. But you two didn't know each other either. So it's quite interesting that through just this like openness to come in and chat about something, we found, we found common interests, but also conversations that we all sort of seem to be wanting to pick up on. Obviously, there were things in common to begin with between the two of you, but there's all these things that that we've discussed at length over this quite a long time that we will discuss later after our presentations, but which I think are also not just specific to our practices, but specific to like a wider context of making or curating or producing, which I think we've been able to talk about because we haven't had the pressure to have an outcome to that conversation. So it's been really interesting to me because there's a lot of, for me, looking at some of those works and looking at those timelines in like New York, in that history, Carol, is like Kim's history. Like you have these like real understandings of the strata, but also questioning of like, where do I go next with this? I think that's been really good to like, also for me, like we've had some real discussions about where does this all go next, right? Where do we go with it? But we haven't had any answers. No one has answers.
Or maybe the other thing to say in the spirit of Unfixed, right, which is asking to consider that, to fix something is to control it, to affix it to a particular point in time, and how so much of what can happen is recognizing the impact of the making and the reception of an art experience can feel one way, and then as time continues to unfold and change, it can also shift. I was just in a conversation with an artist who was using like the archival gloves, blue archival gloves in a video. And then now that the video is being shown in 2020 and beyond, like there's no way to unsee the glove as protection when it comes to the pandemic, right? So even without our intention, works meanings become unfixed and recombined, based on what happens in the world around us.
Because we can't control that, hey? Because we live so many unfixed. Nothing is fixed. But also, like, history moves really fast these days. Or maybe it always has. I don't know, late capitalism, etc.
Will you add your art reflection to our conversation now, and then we'll continue on this?
Yeah. So
I feel like there's a whole nother dimension that I can't wait to add.
Maybe I'm procrastinating. All right. So I'm going to start with an object. So if we can you see this thing here? If you have speaker view, it'll be the biggest thing on your screen.
Gorgeous.
Okay. This is a cane flute. Because I don't know if you can see there, but there's some holes. It's a really ugly cane. It's a sort of like a classic cane. The one which you would usually, one that is associated with injury or old age. I've been trying to make this work for a long time, a long, like maybe 8 years that I tried to make a work around this cane, which is a lot for such an insignificant sort of looking object. But it's because it seemed to mean a lot to me and I couldn't shake it off. I grew up in El Salvador, and which, when it comes to the cane, this is like a ubiquitous kind of thing. So it's not like a culturally specific object. But my grandfather was a music teacher and a musician. And he would come and visit us in the city. And when he had to go to the doctor, different doctor's appointments. And so he would stay with us. And he, with my family, and he was really interested in playing music at all times. He really just missed it. And he was very fidgety and impatient when it came to people's everyday bullshit, So he had this cane, and he would just like play it. And I didn't realize how difficult it would have been. But if you can see here, there's frets. He didn't make his own frets. My grandfather used the frets that were already there. And so what he did was he played the music that he knew out of this cane. And he did it to entertain me, but also he did it to entertain himself. And he was trying really hard to teach me how to play music. But we just had too much of a good time for that to take place. And so when I just really wanted to make this object. It just sort of wouldn't leave me alone. And it wasn't the object that I needed to work with. And I didn't realize at the time that that wasn't the thing, which is a kind of perpetual creative, I guess, problem is what out of the thing that you're fixated on is the thing that is the actual artwork. And I guess this is why I asked you those questions before, Carol, because I was trying to work out what about it. And so I just kept making this thing. I made it out of different, just so many different materials, and it just wasn't working. So then I started to talk to friends about it. And also I didn't want it to be about, I didn't want this to be about a nostalgic feeling for my grandfather. And I just don't like that idea that when you make something like this, that it's going to be taken as like, this is, you know, I wanted it to be about something. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that I didn't want it to be about missing or nostalgia. I wanted it to be something else, because that's not really where I was at with this object. So I bumped into a friend on the street, and I was saying to her that I was having trouble putting this work together. We just walked, and it turned out that she went home and thought about it. But then whilst I was talking to her, the conversation had already started with another friend who was like, oh, why don't you make your own frets? Why don't you make your own? You know, I had already tried to make the flute, but I didn't know how to tune it. So I started to read about tuning. How do you make a tuning to a particular sort of style of flute playing? And so it happened that my friend Brian started to send me links to particular tunings. So then I spoke to somebody else. I spoke to Jeff in my studios, who's Jeff Neal, who's an amazing maker and sculptor, who said, if you're going to be making a flute out of this cane and you want to retain that cane look, because I wanted to retain that thing, that ugliness about it, you're going to have to change the inside, the metal of the cane, so it sounds really good. So all of a sudden, these things started to happen. When it was just me thinking about it, is what I'm trying to say, and trying to make it. This thing really wasn't working. And it wasn't until I started to talk to different people about it that the thing started to take form. And the more I talked to people about how the thing was starting to take form, as I was talking to people, the more people felt like giving me advice on it. And the more it seemed to make a lot of sense. And so then my friend Fayan, so I made my own frets. Jeff helped me make these frets. So then I'm going to show you a video. I hope we'll just keep talking. It seems like you can't put okay, so I'll have to show you the video. That as she is becoming blindish, she is going to need an extension to her body to help guide her, in that this cane may be the thing. Not just because the cane, from my perspective, not just because the cane is this way to assist someone for walking and finding their way, but because the gesture of the cane itself, it's a thing of the cane itself, the passing down, the ability for it to be played. It's a story around the cane itself and all the things attached to it, that I feel like for Fayan, that it's a functionality of all those things together that were important for her. And it became clear through our conversations from what was important to me, that was also important to her in this cane. So what you can see here is my friend Brian's family playing the cane. So Brian, who helped me work out the tuning for it. who's a musicologist. And so here's me trying to, it's still, you know, this is, I guess, like a prototype of the object that would be great to one point really keep working on and finishing it. But at this point in time, it's still in this scenario, because it's still in this kind of like prototype. It's not scenario, I said scenario, it's not the word, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's still like a prototype, and it needs to be taken further, because it needs to be easy to play and it needs to be functional. I think this is fine trying it out. So it needs to be comfortable. It needs to be kind of daggy. I don't know if you know what that means, Carol, but it needs to just not, it doesn't, it's function over, you know, like fashion. But, you know, the material is great. It sounds really good. The grip is also great, but it sounds very beautiful. So this is Brian playing it.
Spaces to be more inclusive and accessible.
So this is Fayan talking about her practice. The thing is that it's out of these, I guess what I'm trying to say, it's out of these conversations and exchanges. So it becomes part of Brian's family. It becomes part of Fayan's family. It's from my family, but it becomes something else again. You know, it's an instrument. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to stop this here. So, oh no, I'm not going to keep sharing. Hold on. So, and then I was talking to a couple of people about it. Can you see this?
Sure can.
There's the cane just here.
On the corner. Yeah.
Yeah. This was part of an exhibition at the St. Paul Street Gallery in Auckland, Aotearoa, where the curator, Charlotte Huddleston, from our conversations, thought to herself that this would be a really good thing to have as part of this exhibition, because the exhibition was about sort of change and exchange. In so many ways, it fits into this unfixed kind of category. But the work at the back here is by Alora and Calzadilla, who, oh, that's my door. By Alora and Calzadilla, who made a work about a parrot, who the point of view of a parrot in the Amazon. And it's about the parrot telling a story. So it's all about these ideas, like this sort of, again, the story, the narration. It's not quite that, it's not that thing of, it's trying to understand something or trying to sort of, yeah, it's this passing down this story, the passing down of stories and ways to understand different things. So Charlotte grabbed the cane and placed it around the gallery, different places. There's one. Mm-hmm. And pre-COVID, invited people to play it. Mm-hmm. A few people who played the object. How are we gonna, let me see. Let's go back to this one. So a few people who played the object were the cane. There were a few different musicians who came in and played it and recorded. And so people would come in, pick up, you know, scheduled, and they would come in and pick up the cane and the flute, and they played their own music from it. So I have this bank of music played by all these different people. And it really made me think about the idea that it was the object, that the object was really necessary, but it also was the facilitator of this exchange between people, this sort of relationality between people. And a lot of them had, my grandfather's never going to meet this incredible Maori woman who made a song from it. But there's something about that sort of labor of understanding and of engaging that I find really interesting. But the thing that I find most interesting is that it's a very intimate relationality, and one that's very concrete to me. And I've done things that are not very intimate relationalities. This is someone listening to a piece of mine, sort of like more like a lecture style. Or I have these speakers where, like, in the sort of sound system, Jamaican sound system, which is like it's not the opposite of intimate, it's a collective intimacy. But there's something about the object, that this object, that stopped meaning something static and something sort of from about me. And it became about this passing around. So all these different people have made little tracks and remixed little tracks, and they're all very beautiful and very intricate. So that's what I have to present. Thank you for letting me use the green screen.
That was wonderful to see how the cane of your grandfather, or I would call it a walking stick, just keeps on sort of changing and giving, and yeah, it sort of, it is the work.
It's
the work, but also with that expanded environment. I think what you're talking about is that how it sort of facilitates all of these things to happen.
Something so ugly.
Yes.
I tried to make something beautiful. You know, I tried to make something, I should know better, right? I've been an artist for not a long time, a couple of decades. I should have known all along that it was something else, but I just kept continuing to go back to make something beautiful, and forgetting completely that it was never I never thought my grandfather's cane was beautiful. It was gross. It was, you know, I had walked through all over the place, you know, it had gone down the street being, I don't know, dug into cow dung or something, you know, down the village. Like, there's so many different surfaces that thing touched.
Well, and all different points of association, right? Because again, when you have an accident and you go to, if you can go to the emergency room, this is the kind of equipment you get, that kind of stock extruded aluminum with the gray rubber tips, right? It's meant to serve a very like functional purpose, but yeah, there's no, it also speaks to, you know, the health system and its less caring parts, right? Except to hear you tell the story of, you know, can't get away from the cane. There's something about working with the cane that needs to happen. And then when it becomes a question of, well, where does the beauty and the care, where can it be found? And part of the answer was in the frets and the interior, so that the sound that it made, that was the beauty. The intimacy of using it as an instrument of breathing, literal, literally animating it with one's breath. Like all of a sudden, there are all these different forms of care and intimacy and connection that actually does wrap around all of these really ugly or utilitarian objects. But I think in each of our projects, you find these moments of unexpected but really profound opportunity, right? Whether it's filling the car up with petrol and having the ability to escape, right? Mm. But Kim, what are you thinking of when it comes to the cane? Have you had a chance to play it yourself?
No, I haven't actually, but I have confronted many canes like it. So, and other pieces of very utilitarian sort of equipment for, my parents, for example, so on my father in particular. And they're really ugly. So, but the thing is that I think, Lucretia, when you first heard your grandfather play the notes out of his cane, that would have been a remarkable event for you. So, because what it would have done would be to shift what you would associate with the cane normally into some other sort of like a sublime event.
He made me an artist that very moment.
Exactly.
It's a moment when I realized that the world have so many possibilities. That's why I couldn't stop going back to this ugly thing.
Because from something so little or small or mundane, something so big and beautiful could come. So I can just imagine that sort of you wanting to share that moment where you heard the music come from the cane, and also the fact that your grandfather had done it himself. He didn't have the cane tuned or have special holes made in it. It was just the way it came. So to me, it's quite remarkable. And I can understand why you would want to share that.
Yes, so that was the thing. It's so weird, isn't it, that the way that it's not weird, it's just the way that the brain works. Like you set yourself a problem and you may not resolve it immediately, and you continue to see all sides of it.
And so it seems like the cane is continuing to, claim its own life and have its own life. And that can happen beyond you as well.
This is the best thing about it. It's interesting also because this is not like a utopian cane. It's important that the cane is an ugly piece of shit.
Well, it's utilitarian, and as Carol said, it's sort of hospital issue. It's the one that, in a way, you may have to put a deposit on it, but you keep it. So or you buy it on the spot, and it's not meant to be beautiful. They don't have different colors, so you can choose something different. It's just the materials it's made in and the materials that are most purpose oriented for the actual, what it's used for. But you've created beauty out of it. So
joy, it's a joy of it.
It's joy.
Aha, we're there.
We're there. We're in the joy part of the. So we talk about joy pretty much every Sunday, every Saturday, every Friday night that we've met. Because I guess COVID and lockdown has made us think about it, but to me also thinking about like narratives around trauma, I'm not necessarily interested in when it comes to making art, you know. I'm interested in like the politics of joy. And I was thinking about, I guess we started talking a couple of months after the Black Lives Matter uprising and what it meant. I think we've compared stories and about the places we're at. And, you know, I feel like that, at least for me, demographically, people like me are not supposed to have these moments of joy. We're supposed to be kind of spicy, right? But upon demand. So I guess, yeah, this was my angle of it, but you both had also different angles on joy.
Well, I suppose my joy comes from, I suppose, a sort of looking for something, and something that is, and just sort of letting myself just look and enjoying that activity. So not having to actually find it, but actually looking for it and the excitement. And to me, that sort of is one of the things that, and gaining more understanding of it as I go. So never having the whole picture, never having something completed. And like the reason why I talk to Carol about, you know, the environment, like it's part of the circumstances that I live in my, and I, very interesting, Lucretia, you've got a sort of planetary perspective. The sort of bigger world that I occupy as a little speck. Is, it sounds a bit profound, but in a way it's about that, looking for something and the joy in looking for something.
What about you, Carol?
Whenever we get to this kind of this part of our conversation, I feel like often what defines joy often abuts against other very difficult truths. And that's almost that's maybe even one of the important parts of understanding that relationship, is that it's not about a pleasantry and a lightness, and but that the joy comes from also connecting or pushing up against these other, yes, more difficult truths. I can't stop thinking about the cane And again, part of the message that the ugliness brings is also the message of loss of ability, right? Of not being a part of a society, an ableist framed society, right? That's imagining you can walk on both of your feet, or in the case of your friend who needed the cane for other kinds of wayfinding because of losing their sight. You know, the question is, what happens when one starts to deviate from the ableist or conformity of dominant social expectations? And so much of the work that we make, that we are drawn to sharing and showing, finds these trapdoors or these portals into other ways of knowing and being. And with that comes this energy that we often also name as joy and resilience, right? So that's often where why we talk about joy becomes so important, is because it's within an understanding of the tensions and the ruptures that are a part of the worlds that we live in. So, and
Yeah, like
and in a way, the naming of it as joy, actually, when you're talking about that, it's not that you've got there, but it's sort of like you're on the path. So for me, it's I'm on the path if I feel that joy and that authenticity of what I'm pursuing. And it's sort of like I don't need to know where I'm going, and I don't need to have got there, but I actually have that joy in knowing I'm on the path.
Yeah, this is not a cult, you know, this is not, we're not, regardless of how much orange I see you wearing there, Kim. This is not a cult.
Yes.
But speaking of this is not a cult, I'm having an Octavia Butler moment. Will you guys indulge me for a second?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Because I am not alone in this moment of having folks including Adrienne Marie Brown and Toshi Regan and Alexis Pauline Gumbs really bring the kind of the insight of Octavia. And one of her main characters in Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, Lauren Alamina talks about Earthseed and that it's not a cult.
Yeah.
Right. That's when you were said, this is not a cult.
Yeah.
But I actually just happened to have an interesting quote from Octavia Butler that I just love about positive obsession. Because I think maybe that's another dynamic that we kind of identify in each other, is our positive obsessions. And Octavia writes, using it is like aiming carefully in archery. I took archery in high school because it wasn't a team sport. I liked some team sports, but in archery, you did well or badly according to your own efforts. No one else to blame. I wanted to see what I could do. I learned to aim high, aim above the target, aim just there. Relax, let go. If you aimed right, you hit the bullseye. I saw positive obsession as a way of aiming yourself, your life, at your chosen target. Decide what you want, aim high, and go for it. I think she was onto something.
Yes, and it's not a cult.
No, it's not. I think she was like, I'm really impressed that she was into archery.
Right?
And it's very interesting, Carol, when you were describing that. I felt myself pulling the bow back and aiming high and doing that, because in high school, I think we did archery one day for, well, not very often, for sport. Yes, that sort of actually hitting the board was a great achievement. But it was a wonderful feeling when you'd actually pull the bow back and it shot out and it actually hit something. It was a wonderful feeling in itself.
Oh, amazing. What? Yeah, I think Octavia Butler is like definitely such an important thread to thinking. Like, it's really grounding, because what it does, her work, is that it removes it from this in terms of science fiction, she intimacy is really important to her, which is why it's important, you know, I love her work, but also because her fiction, her science fiction, is like a psychological one that understands like a real complexity to things, which I find really in line with the Unfixed ethos, that because things are complex, they are also unsolvable. And that there are some things that are completely solvable, absolutely. And thinking about politics and, you know, COVID and all these things that have really actually been such a big presence in the way in which we introduce ourselves in the mornings or the evenings for you, Carol. There are some things that are absolutely necessarily needing fixing. But then there's this creative process.
We can choose to use some other words, though, right? Instead of fixing, there can be repair.
Yeah.
There can be transformation. There can be, I guess that's a part of what else I think is interesting about the time that we're in and the dialogues, is when it comes to another thing that I had never mentioned before is work that artwork that wants to activate some kind of political conversation. We would often call out the term, you know, social justice, right? Or, but more and more, I'm hearing the importance of naming transformative justice. And for me, somehow that way of approaching, you know, recognizing things need to shift and change because they cause harm to each other, to the planet, you know, et cetera. How do we transform our behaviors as opposed to fix things, which would still give us some, I think, unreasonable sense of control of our ability to make things work in our favor.
Yeah.
I'm going to fix it because I don't want to see this. I don't want to be bothered by these problems anymore. Versus, we all are involved in systems that when we overproduce, it has a result. When we underproduce, it has a result. So we're constantly adjusting. I want to be careful not to start to speak too abstractly.
No, we did say we'd leave marks for later.
Yes, did. Brilliant.
I'm thinking maybe we should end there too. Okay, we're recording again.
All right, so that was it. We've just had the conversation. Actually, for continuity's sake, we will say that, yes, people, you have picked up the fact that we recorded this later. So thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you for listening. It's been certainly, this conversation has been a wonderful thing for me in particular, and I think for everyone else as well. We've had a lot of fun. There's been a lot of laughter, and there's also been I feel, way more certain in the unfixed zone than perhaps I did before. I feel I am equipped now for being unfixed.
Well, I would agree. Also, it's been amazing to be companions in kind of sharing the impact of the pandemic in these different parts of the world. And again, that feeling of what each of us has experienced informing the other at different times, that's been really remarkable. I'd be interested to know if anybody can talk a little bit about a project that they're working on, just as a, you know, we're leaving this conversation, but what are we bringing with us into our next projects?
Oh, that's
and
a good.
Yeah, and maybe to get started, because Lucretia, you asked me to speak about this. You know, one thing that I'm working on is a project in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area with the Swarthmore College Library. It's a project called Rosine 2.0, and it's actually looking at linking the history of mid-19th century mutual aid society work by a group of Quaker and Unitarian women, and linking that with contemporary socially engaged art at the intersection of creative practice and harm reduction, and a deep kind of engagement and analysis around systemic harm that especially impacts those working in the street economies. So it's a project that's just getting started. It absolutely beckons for an unfixed mindset, because there is so much to learn and to be engaged again around this idea of collective and interdependent experience. So I look forward to seeing where all of that will lead.
Oh, amazing. I have just finished, I finished my PhD about 7 months ago, and I'm still making things, but I'm taking a little break from, I'm making a lot of sound works, which I love because I have really missed the creativity of playing around, but also of collaborating. So I've been doing that a little bit, but I really am enjoying teaching. I think that's been quite a, it's been quite a big feature of my year so far. And you know, we're in the middle of a lockdown here, and being a parent is something to a teenager is something that I'm finding great joy in right now, especially at this time. And seeing my son through such a difficult part of, you know, yeah, just this difficult time at a difficult time of, you know, a person's life. So that's been my focus. Yeah. What about you, Kim?
Well, it's like you, I have been locked down as well, and restricted to in a particular place. And I suppose I have moved further into seeing my efforts to be sustainable and to grow food for myself and for my partner, to actually see it very much like the way that I would nurture an art practice. So there are failures, there are successes, there are wonderful things that happen from it, and it leads me forward into a feeling positive about what's to come, which is what has generated my art practice all for many all these years. So it's an optimism about the uncertain and the unfixed and the unfinished.
Filled with possibility.
Filled with possibility.
Look, I go up and down. Sometimes I feel like things are full of possibility. When the sun is out, sometimes it doesn't feel like that right now, but we just have to lockdown is a time where we just have to take it a day at a time. But I feel like, just going back to these conversations, I think we all have really active lives outside of this, where I felt like this has been a good place to come in, sort of talk about those things.
Yeah. Well, and I've really appreciated what just happened right now, and it's, which is both kind of working on cultivating a positive spiral, a generative spiral, but then also that countervailing force of dynamics often include other swings, right? Whether it's the garden metaphors, Kim, that you were talking about, or Lucretia, what you were just saying about some days it doesn't feel like possibility, right? I really appreciate that kind of candor that we can bring to our conversations.
And that is what's been very rewarding as well.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. You never know, though. Some things that feel like nothing has happened. I've been there other moments, sometimes it's a day later, sometimes it's years later, you go, oh, something else was going on. And now here it is.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I think we should take this opportunity to turn off our screens and listen to some music.
Oh, that's a great idea, Kim. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. And thanks, everyone who's watched this or is currently watching this. I hope you got something out of it. And thanks, Kim and Carol.
Thanks, Lucretia. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, everyone.